Hey, what's going on, everybody? Happy Sunday. Hopefully, we're all enjoying the last day of this week. You might be going out there getting ready for church, or maybe you got other plans today, but we do still have this storm off the southeast coastline working its way inland, so that will be a big component of today's forecast. But we're also going to look ahead to next week as well as we get ready to kind of get past Memorial Day. I know it's not even here yet, and tomorrow's Memorial Day, but it's always good to go ahead and plan ahead. And I do see more trouble on the horizon next week as well in the tropics. So I wouldn't be surprised a week from today, maybe a week and some change from today, to see a very similar satellite imagery picture that you're looking at right now. So just giving you kind of a long-term heads up here, but we're definitely watching that. Let's also talk about Memorial Day itself, though, because I don't want to jump the gun too much. And again, for some of us, it will be a really nice Memorial Day, but for others, maybe not so much. Now, the good news is, I do think, at least compared to yesterday, tomorrow will be a much nicer day, and it might not be a complete washout for really anybody, although there will be some, scattered rain for parts of the country, but I don't see a complete washout for anybody for Memorial Day, so that is some good news. With that said, though, I've got my coffee, and I guess we can go ahead and start talking about the forecast. So, looking at satellite, again, this is that low pressure spinning right off the coast of the Carolinas, really right offshore of Myrtle Beach right now. Again, this is not a tropical storm right now, although you may be fooled looking at it on satellite thinking, wow, it's a pretty impressive tropical storm for late May, but unfortunately this thing's really just ingesting a lot of dry air and kind of cold air here on one side. So because of that, it's not completely warm at the core of the storm, which keeps it from getting that characteristic as a tropical system. But nonetheless, the impacts are basically the same. We had some really gusty winds yesterday there in the Carolina coastline. I've got some friends in Myrtle Beach that had gusts getting up into that 45 to 50 mile an hour range. So, definitely a pretty impactful storm for many of us. Now, for today, these impacts are going to shift up kind of towards the higher terrains of, North Carolina and Virginia, as well as into eastern Kentucky and West Virginia. So, yesterday, the Carolinas got it good. Today, you folks up to the north and west are going to kind of cash in on some of that action a bit. And we can see that quite well on radar this morning. We've got this big shield of rain here into much of Kentucky. And I would say this is affecting more of Kentucky than maybe originally expected this time yesterday. So anyone kind of from Campbellsville over to Elizabethtown and back down towards Somerset to the east are getting in on this rain, and this has gotten as far north as kind of the Ohio River. Now, a lot of this you see in Ohio here is actually evaporating before it hits the ground, and that's also one of the reasons this has been such a cold storm, is we had such dry air in place over the Carolinas yesterday that whenever you got this rain to ride up and over that cold air, and whenever the rain began to go through it, with those low dew points began to evaporate, and that evaporation caused cooling, much like we see during the wintertime whenever we get winter storms around here, where it might start at 45 degrees in rain and then end as snow. Yesterday was a very similar setup, just not quite cold enough to get that winter precipitation. But again, this big shield of rain is going to kind of just hang around this section of the country today, although slowly begin to die out a little bit throughout the day for most of us. Now, if you're up here kind of from southwestern Virginia down towards Boone and back towards the Asheville area, here in the higher terrain of those eastern facing slopes, we're going to get a lot of rain today, and that's mainly just because the flow here is going to hit the side of those mountains, and that will allow the air to continue to rise and help to produce precipitation when all is said and done. So that's kind of a look at radar right now. Now kind of moving this ahead into what we can expect for the rest of today, as well as your Memorial Day. We'll move this into about 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock this afternoon. Again, you'll notice very heavy rainfall here for those higher elevations in western North Carolina. Other than that, more of a light to moderate kind of just cloudy, misty rain here for sections of western Virginia and eastern Kentucky, as well as the southern half of West Virginia as well. So you'll notice that. And South Carolina today, you're going to be in a lot better shape than you were yesterday. Still some scattered showers, especially north of I-20, but I don't expect nearly as, just heavy and persistent rain, mainly just because the flow at this point is now southerly, so we're being helped a little bit by that compared to just kind of the flow coming out of the east here into the mountains. So As we move this into tonight, again, still expecting that rain to continue, and the heaviest up here into the higher elevations of western North Carolina and southwestern Virginia. And this is looking at midnight tonight, still dealing with that rain here into sections of eastern Kentucky and southern West Virginia, as well as those higher terrains, of course. Now, as we go into our Memorial Day morning, I'll stop this at 8 a.m., it becomes a lot more scattered. Still pockets of very heavy rain here into western North Carolina and southwestern Virginia, but other than that, it's more of just kind of a scattered rain and cloud event for the majority of us here in these affected states. Now, as we get into tomorrow afternoon, this low pressure is just going to kind of really sit there and meander around, the showers are going to become a bit more sporadic, although there for our Memorial Day. So if you're up here into northern Virginia and West Virginia, maybe even Maryland tomorrow, you then kind of get in on that easterly flow, and you have the chance of some kind of scattered showers tomorrow afternoon. Now, the good news is, by this point, it won't be nearly as cold as we saw yesterday in the Carolinas. So if you're seeing rain tomorrow, it won't be nearly as bad as maybe we saw yesterday. So cooler, obviously, but not, into the 50s with just constant downpours for your Memorial Day. Again, very scattered on Monday for anyone really from South Carolina up through Maryland and to West Virginia as well, going into Memorial Day. Now, that eventually kind of finally dies out, and as we get to Tuesday afternoon, this doesn't go quite that far, but I really expect things to improve as this low pressure kind of kicks its way back out into the Atlantic Ocean. So looking at today's high temperatures, we've kind of got a nice little heart shaped here to start our Sunday of some cooler temperatures. So there you go. That's something interesting to look at. But really anyone that's in that heavy precipitation today, it will be pretty chilly with temperatures not really getting out of the low 60s and upper 50s. So again, eastern Kentucky, southern West Virginia, western Virginia and the western North Carolina mountains not really breaking 60, even here into kind of the Piedmont and foothills of the Carolinas. Still a bit of a chilly day today, although not quite as miserable as yesterday for you folks there. All right, so moving this forecast ahead a little bit, we're going to start talking about past Memorial Day and what we can expect. So we will go ahead and do that now. So I'm going to start this here at 8 p.m. on Memorial Day evening. Again, we have, just to kind of set the stage for you, we have this high pressure up here into the north that is kind of retreating out of the picture, and we have this low pressure that will still be left over the southeast, kind of also beginning to retreat out of the picture. Now, what this is going to do into the middle of this coming week is allow that southerly flow to ramp back up here into sections of the east, and that is going to allow things to heat up again and become quite muggy again going into our kind of really starting Tuesday afternoon, but really into Wednesday afternoon. So from Wednesday here, again, things will be warming up. It will be becoming more muggy as well, and that will also continue into Thursday afternoon likely. But this is whenever our next kind of story, I think, really begins to evolve going into later this week. So you'll notice we'll get some low pressure to kind of form here along the Gulf Coast, and this will likely begin to ramp up a little bit as we get into, later this work week. This is Friday afternoon, low pressure beginning to really develop here over the Florida Peninsula. And then as we get into Saturday, that will, much like this past weekend, kind of hang out a little bit before it kind of tries to move northward up into the Carolina coastline. Now, what happens from this point on, still very far out there, and, we're not quite sure, but it does look like we could get another big kind of rainstorm here into the southeast going into really anytime from this weekend into early the following week. So I know that's, pretty far out there, but the models have been pretty adamant about that. So we're definitely going to want to keep an eye on it. So again, looking at radar on a national view, dealing with that rain today where we talked about. Tomorrow, dealing with more scattered rain where we talked about. Going into Tuesday afternoon, still kind of scattered rain a little bit here in the mid-Atlantic, but things should be improving before we get into Wednesday afternoon and things really kind of begin to improve. Now, that being said, we will still have kind of maybe some afternoon pop-up storms by the time we get into Wednesday. But, that heavy nonstop downpours should definitely be calming down by then. So that's Wednesday afternoon. Pretty similar story Thursday afternoon. Again, warming up as well as those scattered storms if you're here into much of the East Coast. But if you're down into Florida starting on Thursday, that's when that low pressure is going to try to get its act together. So I would expect for areas kind of, Florida southbound. Thursday starting then really could be more of an actual just more of a washout kind of day, and that could even continue into Friday as that low pressure really hangs around here into the southeast coastline before sometime this coming weekend. This low pressure really begins to get its act together and, kind of rides up the east coast, and we could get some kind of big time rainstorm again out of that. So another important thing to look at, and I love to show this time of year, of course, are the dew points. So you'll notice going through this week, those dew points work their way back into the East Coast, and it becomes to get a bit more muggy again. So this is Wednesday afternoon, dew points getting back up in and around 60 here in the east. So that begins to become a little bit uncomfortable at that point. And as we continue through next week into Thursday, those dew points continue to climb. And a similar story even into this coming Friday with dew points widespread above 60 here south of the Ohio River. Now, if you're up here north of the Ohio River and into the northeast, this week still should be relatively nice as you still have enough kind of dry air hanging around and enough clear skies that it should still be quite a nice week. It's kind of south of that Ohio River line here. And then I would expect it to be a bit more summer-like, as well as some afternoon thunderstorms for some folks here going through the second half of this work week before whatever low pressure does decide to go wherever it goes. That could help to really enhance those dew points somewhere here into the southeastern coastline. So this is straight from the Climate Prediction Center. This is the 6 to 10 day probability of above or below average temperatures. So again, you'll notice kind of really north of the Ohio River here, kind of like I talked about, likely above average temperatures where we're going to be dealing with some high pressure, helping to keep things clear and allowing the sun to help, heat us up a little bit. But if you're south here of that area, if you're right here along the southern United States, likely cooler than average due to the fact that we're going to have just a lot of cloud cover and just some rain hanging around as well, keeping those temperatures down a bit. And, that lines pretty well with the precipitation forecast as well. Drier up here thanks to that high pressure here into the Midwest. But if you're kind of here into the southern tier of the country or back out west, above average precipitation looks a bit more likely in the 6 to 10 day outlook. Now, talking a little bit more about this low pressure and where it's going to go, of course, it is a little bit out there, but you will notice from our Euro Ensemble members, they do pretty well agree that by the time we get into Thursday and Friday, we will have low pressure somewhere here in the Gulf of Mexico, helping to influence our weather there over Florida. Now, what happens after that? They do agree pretty well that that gets east of Florida and into kind of the Gulf Stream area and could begin to strengthen. But after that, you'll notice they really kind of diverge. We got some members that just continue to ride this out into the Atlantic Ocean and it's more of a glancing blow to the southeast. We have some that do what we had this week and it kind of brings it inland a bit, and that would of course bring the probability of heavy rainfall, maybe even a little bit of severe weather into the eastern side of that low into the forecast. So again, just to summarize, heavy rain today for some folks as well as cool temperatures tomorrow, and Tuesday more scattered rainfall with warming back up before we get a little bit of a break between kind of Wednesday and Friday of this week, although warmer, a bit cloudier still, and some scattered storms before going into this following weekend. Eyes are back on the tropics for maybe some trouble. With that said though, again, if you're heading out to church, good luck, have a blessed day of course, and with all that said, really everyone just have a blessed day and have a great rest of your Sunday, and I will see you all tomorrow.